Hello everyone and welcome to our modelled writing video. So if you've been with us before, then you'll know how we will structure today's video. But if you're new here, welcome, and I hope today you find it useful. We are going to look at two task twos for the writing part of the IELTS exam. So the task two are the essay style questions. You'll have 40 minutes to answer these ones, and the examiner will be looking for a minimum of 250 words. However, with that being said, there is no upper limit. So as long as you hit that minimum, that's the most important thing. So we'll go through those today, and together we'll think of, I'll talk you through a plan, and then I'll do the write-up. So if you're following at home, then this is a great way to practice. Maybe you've booked your IELTS exam. Maybe you just want a bit more, a few more tips or a bit more advice on the task two. As we go along, I'll be giving you hints and important parts of this IELTS exam to watch out for or to include, things like that. So we're really aiming for the top band scores here. Okay, well, let's get started then on the first topic, and it's going to be all about history and culture. The question: some people think that it is important for children to learn about the history and culture of their own country, while others believe that they should learn about other countries as well. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages of this trend? Okay, so interesting question. We've actually got, well, when you think about it, we've got two trends in a way. So this is the first trend. Some people think it is important for children to learn about the history and culture of their own country, while, so a different trend, others believe that they should learn about other countries as well. And then we're thinking about the advantages and disadvantages of, well, it should be if it's plural, of these trends, really. But we'll tackle it, I think, for today. I'm going to show you perhaps a bit more unusual way of tackling this question. I wouldn't normally, but just because I would normally stick to what, if you've seen our videos before, what we usually do for an advantages and disadvantages. But in this case, I just think that these are two different opinions which should be separated, and then we can tackle the advantages and disadvantages of each. So we cover all areas of the question. So let me show you how I'm going to think about doing this today, and I'd love you to follow along at home, and if you've got any other ideas, let us know. But this is what we're going to do for this one. So paragraph 1, let's start with talking about somebody's own country, and then within this one paragraph, I'm going to talk about some maybe one or two advantages and one or two disadvantages. Then I'm going to go into other countries, and that's making sure with spelling. Spelling's a big part of the exam. But this is okay, this is just our notes, so not to worry here, but in the exam itself. And then exactly the same, maybe one, maybe two advantages, and the same for disadvantages. So we're tackling both statements. I know this is a slightly strangely worded question, but that's okay. We're making sure that we're answering everything that's being spoken about here. Okay, so let's have a think then of some ideas for it's important to learn about the history and culture of somebody's own country. Well, this can help with things like cultural identity. That springs to mind. Self-awareness. You feel like if you have a collective sort of idea of what happened in your own country where you live, then you've got this sense of community. For example, let's think of an example here. Well, Sicily, I know, was invaded by the Normans in the 1800s. So for each advantage and disadvantages, we'll think of an example. In 1800s, oh no, 1800s. So that plays into their cultural identity today. Obviously, the Normans, a different part of the world they were invading from. So if you understand this cultural awareness, if people look slightly different in society, there's more acceptance there because you know the history behind it. Okay, so a disadvantage of learning about the history of one's own country. Maybe there's this idea of, well, that's limiting somebody's learning. And this can lead, it's one perspective that can lead to maybe radical ideas or just a one-sided view. So there's events in history which, depending which side or which country you're in, you have a different interpretation. So for example, there was, I know in history there was a rebellion in Vietnam called the Sisters Rebellion, Trung Sisters Rebellion, and this is celebrated in Vietnam, whereas in China, this is taught as a uprising, and it's seen very negatively. So depending where you are, it changes your perspective. And if you only know of one side, then this can affect your view upon things. It can lead to different ideas. Okay, then, so let's think about other countries. While others believe that they should learn about other countries as well. Advantages of this, well, we can increase empathy with this, understanding, for example, apartheid in South Africa. If this is known about and acknowledged, then that's an A there. Then there's more empathy and understanding of the situation, and you're just more informed. Okay, so that's the advantage there. And then a disadvantage, well, sometimes we're talking about children here, so we're making sure to answer the question. Sometimes for children, things that are happening in other countries or big themes are difficult to grasp for young learners, especially if they're not as relevant perhaps in their life. So for example, if you're trying to teach a child about the cold who lives in perhaps Europe, but perhaps Western Europe, about the Cold War, which was happening between the Soviet Union and America, doesn't really have as much of an effect in Western Europe, for example. A child might not understand this concept. It's a difficult one to get your head around. So yeah, that's the example for that one. Okay, so conclusion. Well, this is not, it's not asking for our opinion. So we're just going to state the various advantages and disadvantages, and just talk about what we've been discussing in the essay. Maybe of each statement here. Okay then, so this is, it might seem a little bit thorough, and on purpose I've done a bit more in detail notes because this is slightly different how we're approaching this one. but the essence is still the same. We are going to approach it the same. It will be the same words. You know, this doesn't have to be a huge essay, way over the limits, just because it's a bit different. We'll approach it exactly the same, and I'll show you how now. So the first thing we need to do, like everything in task 2 and task 1 actually, is we need to paraphrase this first sentence here. Okay, so some people think that it is important for children to learn about the history and culture of their own country, while others believe they should learn about other countries as well. How about we say we can start out with maybe a school of thought suggests that kids should learn about, maybe understand the historical and cultural. So if a great tip here is if you can't paraphrase the say history, you're thinking of a synonym, struggling, let's just change the word form. So history and culture, the historical and cultural background relating to their home nation, something like this. Okay, so that's the first statement. Whereas it is also, we could say something like argued, or this is quite a nice word, deemed, a bit more unusual, which is good. Unusual words that are accurate are great for those higher band scores. That international, maybe perspectives on these subjects are important are also important, maybe. Okay, let's read this back. A school of thought suggests that kids should understand the historical and cultural backgrounds. The historical and cultural background, we'll leave it as that, relating to their home nation. Whereas it is also deemed that international perspectives on these subjects are, we've used also. Whereas, maybe we could say in contrast, it is deemed that international perspectives on these subjects are also important. This essay will examine, now we're going into what we're going to do, both statements and the benefits, great synonyms for advantages, disadvantages, benefits and drawbacks of both will be explored. This essay will examine both statements, and the benefits and drawbacks of both will be explored. Okay then, so let's start off with somebody's home nation, their own country, and we'll look at the advantages and disadvantages. So a nice topic sentence. There are some clear benefits, advantages, positive outcomes of learning for a child to learn about their home country's beginnings or development, maybe. There are some clear positive outcomes for a child to learn about their home country's development. About their home's development. It's a bit wordy, this, their we've used nations, about where they live and its development. Maybe through time. It's development through time. Okay, so the main benefit is this idea of self-awareness and cultural identity. The main plus is the self-awareness and cultural identity that this brings. Okay, so we're going into our first, well, we've only got one for each, otherwise it's too much. Maybe we can just state that actually too. So there is a clear positive outcome for a child to learn about where they live. This is primarily due to the fact maybe we can switch this around a little bit, due to the fact of it bringing self-awareness and cultural identity. Okay, let's go into an example. So for example, the island of Sicily was invaded by the Normans in the 1800s. Oh, sorry, there's an R there. Normans. And this led to a change in this led to a cultural shift in how, we've used a cultural before, a shift in how people acted and looked. Okay, so this obviously created some change in the community. And so now we can talk about, well, if this is known, then this creates more acceptance in society and a sense of community, maybe. So if the younger generation was to be educated on this, it would lead to more empathy and a sense of community and acceptance, maybe. We've used would lead to acceptance and a sense of community. Okay, so that's our first advantage and our only advantage. We're only doing one of each. Now let's go into our negative side. So a nice linking word like however, on the other hand. However, there is also a striking negative with this argument. However, there's also a striking negative with this argument, being that, let's go straight into what it is, our topic sentence, being that this can create limited views and even potentially maybe radical ideas. Okay, we're going to talk about how the truth changes from nation to nation. So this idea of truth can change depending on where you live. In Vietnam, for instance, the Chung sisters rebellion, capitals for the, as it's something that happened, an event, rebellion in Vietnam, actually not for the R. The Trung sisters rebellion is celebrated. Meanwhile, in China, it is taught as a maybe barbarian uprising or as a brutal uprising. Okay, let's read this back and see how it's sounding. There is a clear positive outcome for a child to learn about where they live and its development through time. It's, what are we talking about? And the development through time? This is primarily due to the fact of its bringing self-awareness of the education of this, of learning this, bringing self-awareness and cultural identity, bringing about. For example, the island of Sicily was invaded by the Normans in the 1800s, and this led to a shift in how people acted and looked. If the younger generation was to be educated on this, it would lead to acceptance and a sense of community. Let's, maybe we can be more specific. And this led to a shift in particular in how people looked. If the younger generation was to be educated on this, it would lead to acceptance and a sense of community. However, there is also a striking negative with this argument, being that this can create limited views and even potentially radical ideas. This idea of truth, or this concept of truth, can change depending on where you live. In Vietnam, for instance, the Chung sisters' rebellion is celebrated. Meanwhile, in China, it is taught as a brutal uprising. Okay, so we've got our advantage and our disadvantage of that first statement there. I think that's good. So now we can go into our second statement about international perspectives and should learn about other countries as well. So on the other hand, there is a significant plus side to learning, to becoming educated in other histories on top of one's, or on top of somebody's mother or somebody's own country. That doesn't make too much. In other histories, as well as somebody's. That's a bit wordy. Let's just leave it as well. On the other hand, there is a significant plus side to becoming educated in other histories as well. The main one being that this increases the empathy. The main The main reason for this is it increases a child's empathy for other people, which is an essential life skill. Okay, let's go into our example. And a capital again for an event in history. The apartheid, as an example. The apartheid in South Africa. Provides children with understanding of a very, maybe we could say, difficult time in history. And allows them to think of communities outside of their own, or maybe situations outside of their own. But that's what empathy is, really. Putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Okay, so that's our benefit. Now we can talk about perhaps the disadvantage. Even so, it is vital that we pick appropriate topics for children to learn, as one downside is the fact that some events can be difficult for a young person to grasp, such as the Cold War. Okay, let's read this back and see how we're doing for this paragraph. On the other hand, there is a significant plus side to becoming educated in other histories as well. The main reason for this is it increases a child's empathy for other people, which is an essential life skill. The apartheid in South Africa, as an example, provides children with understanding of a very difficult time, or we've used difficult, very maybe we'll change this. Difficult can be we'll think of a synonym for difficult maybe when we get there. Provides children with an understanding of a very difficult time in history and allows them to think of situations outside of their own. Maybe remove that. Even so, it is vital that we pick appropriate topics for children to learn, as one downside is the fact that some events can be complex for a young person to grasp, such as the Cold War. Okay, I think that's good. So we've got advantages and disadvantages for both there. So now let's do a nice conclusion just to tie this all together. So in conclusion, as demonstrated, there are some advantages. As demonstrated, there are some advantages for learning about your home nations or your home countries, about your country, such as a sense of cultural identity. We're just picking examples now from the essay alongside some disadvantages. And the same, and we're making sure we're spelling this properly. And the same can be said for understanding other nations. There are and the same can be said for a child understanding other nations that are fantastic, or there are necessary aspects like empathy, but also drawbacks such as relating to a young individual's ability to fully comprehend the situation, maybe. In conclusion, as demonstrated, there are some advantages for learning about maybe one's country, or maybe about one's country from a young age, such as a sense of cultural identity, alongside some advantages. Maybe we could do a full stop and say this is alongside some disadvantages. And the same can be said for a child understanding other nations. There are necessary aspects like empathy, but also drawbacks relating to a young individual's ability to fully comprehend the situation. Okay, a bit of the conclusion was probably the most different part of this, just weaving in both situations, but there we go. I think that's good now. So let's count the words and see how we're doing for this one. Okay, so this essay comes to a total of 349 words. So a little bit over the 250, of course, but I still think this is an achievable amount. And you have seen how we've structured this, so you can, of course, use your own examples, use your own points. This is just a creative sort of approach to this question. There's a few different ways that you could have approached this question, so this is the one that I've done today, and hopefully that's been useful for you at home. That's great. Okay, well, with that being said, let's go to the next task, and it's going to look all about, it's going to look at working style. Many people are now working remotely or in hybrid job roles, a mix of working at home and working in a traditional office. What challenges might people face working in these types of jobs? What are some of the reasons these job types are becoming more popular? Okay, so straight away I can see, right, we've got a multi-part question. So this is going to be more straightforward than the last one. I'm going to answer the first question in the first paragraph and the second one in the second. So let's put together our plan and have a think about this. What challenges might people face working in these types of jobs? Well, if you're working from home, just some points that pop into my mind. It is more difficult to participate in society if you're at home all the time. And another point that we can talk about, maybe I'll do 2 points for this paragraph, is if you're at home, things are done differently in the office to at home. So different practices, we can call them practices. Practices at home and in the office. For example, technology side of it, for example, lecturers had to adapt to teaching online, and that brought with it a whole host of new issues and things to think about rather than in the classroom. Okay, so what are some of the reasons these jobs are becoming more popular? Well, of course, saving money on rent. Companies like to do that, particularly for expensive places such as London. And for the individual applying to these roles, this might appeal to perhaps an introverted person or simply someone who doesn't want to commute as well. Maybe that suits their lifestyle a bit better. It suits families. Perhaps one parent stays at home. You know, there's plenty of different groups in society who would benefit from this. So in our conclusion, we just want to restate there are some challenges and also reasons why people do these jobs. These jobs. Okay then. So we've got our 2 questions and we've got our plan. There we go. Let's go to the write-up now and we can think about paraphrasing this first sentence here. Many people are now working remotely or in hybrid job roles, a mix of working at home and working in a traditional office. Okay, so we can start this with something like currently. A significant number of individuals are working remotely, maybe engaged with working out of the office or in a maybe a mixture or hybrid job roles or maybe or in a hybrid. We can use hybrid because we'll explain what that is. Maybe arrangement which entails a combination of work from home and maybe on-site days in a perhaps conventional office setting, something like that. Let's read this back, it's a bit wordy, this one. Currently, a significant number of individuals are engaged with working out of the office or in a hybrid arrangement, which entails a combination of work from home and on-site days in a conventional office setting. Okay, so what is our essay going to do now? It's going to look at, let's have a think. This essay will explore the possible struggles that these workers encounter, come across, as well as the possible causes behind the rise in maybe of this work option. This essay will explore the possible struggles that these workers encounter, as well as the as well as the causes behind, as well as some causes behind the rise in this work option, or the rise in popularity, with a rising trend in this work option, perhaps, for this work option, for this work, or working situation. Okay, so that is our introduction. Let's now tackle the first question. What challenges might people face working in these types of jobs? Well, let's start out with there are a broad range of hurdles that individuals might come across when working a more flexible timetable. The a striking one being the effect that it has on one's participation in society, mainly working from home, for example, and lends itself to not having as much human contact, especially for the introverted, especially for the more introverted personality types. Maybe we could talk about this loneliness epidemic. It is no secret that society is experiencing a loneliness epidemic, despite technology claiming despite, as we want to say that we think we're connected through technology, despite technology having us believe we are more connected than ever. We are more connected than ever before. I like a nice bracket sometimes. Despite technology having us believe we are more connected than ever before. And remote work exemplifies this issue. Okay, that's our first point. Now we're going to go on to the more practical, maybe pragmatic issue of the technology as well. From a pragmatic point of view, another downside is the change in practices from home to office. from home base, from the different work bases, maybe. For example, lecturers during the pandemic were expected to upskill in technology and online learning platforms. This is a vast change from face to face learning. Okay, let's read back this paragraph and see how we're sounding. I think this is actually, there we go. There are a broad range of hurdles that individuals might come across when working a more flexible timetable. A striking one being the effect that it has on one's participation in society. Mainly working from home, for example, lends itself to not having as much human contact, especially for the more introverted personality types. It is no secret that society is experiencing a loneliness epidemic, despite technology having us believe we are more connected than ever before, and remote work exemplifies this issue. From a pragmatic point of view, we could say standpoint, it's a bit more concise. Another downside is the change in practices from the different work bases. For example, lecturers during the pandemic were expected to upskill in technology and online learning platforms. This is a vast change from face-to-face learning. Okay, so these are the two issues that people are facing. Now let's go for the reason in popularity. So we've used despite. Whilst difficulty arises among hybrid or hybrid work, among new ways of working, there is an increasing demand for it nevertheless. Okay, so let's talk about the two perspectives, from a company saving money and from people who want to perhaps save time. So from a company's perspective, they may be able to reduce rent, at least partially. Partially. If some of the staff are at home or are elsewhere. Maybe on office spaces. It's partially if some of the staff are elsewhere. This is imperative, or this has a great, a significant impact on maybe the companies, on their outgoings, maybe, particularly in a notoriously expensive city like London. There we go. Okay, so that's our first example. Now let's go into the what type of person does this job appeal to? So not only are businesses benefiting, but also on a micro level, certain employees are happier, primarily people who you maybe are saving time, not having to commute every day. Okay, so not only are businesses benefiting financially, but also on a micro level, certain employees are happier, or maybe are as well. Primarily people who are saving time, money and time, not having to commute every day. Okay, so let's do a nice example there. This could save some people. Wow, some people travel five days a week, maybe an hour and a half each way, perhaps 3 hours a day. Perhaps up to 15 hours or more a week. This time can now be devoted to family, hobbies, or family or hobbies, making for a happier worker. Okay, let's read this back. Whilst difficulty arises among new ways of working, there is an increasing demand for it nevertheless. From a company's perspective, they may be able to reduce rent on office spaces, at least partially, if some of the staff are elsewhere. This has a significant impact on their outgoings, particularly in a notoriously expensive city like London. Not only are businesses benefiting financially, but also on a micro level, certain employees are as well, primarily people who are saving money and time not having to commute every day. This could save some people perhaps up to 15 hours or more per week. This time can now be devoted to family or hobbies, making for a happier worker. Let's do that for this one. Okay, I think we can tie this up with a nice conclusion now. So in summary, this modern arrangement does bring some technical issues from time to time. However, it also brings financial advantages for both the employer and employee. Okay, I think we can keep it quite simple and leave it at that. So let's count the words for this one. Okay, so this has come to 323 words. So we've hit the 250 minimum there. And this was quite a straightforward two-question approach. So we've just answered the first question here and the second question here. Right, so that brings us to the end of today's video. Thank you so much for coming along and sticking with it. The first question was a unique one, and I showed you an interesting way which you can approach that specific one. And the second one was a two-part question, which are quite common and quite straightforward to answer. So hopefully that's been useful today. We'd love to hear your comments and questions that you have. Let us know, and we'll see you in the next video.